All right, let's do our tints and shades. So of course, the first thing I want you to do is make sure your first and last name are on your paper and your period. Okay, so what we're gonna do, I don't want this to confuse you. You can cross out the word tone. We're gonna do shade, hue, and tint, okay? And remember, hue is just another name for color. So I'm gonna start with, these three are gonna be your primary colors. I am going to start with red. You only need a little bit, maybe even a dime size amount. And I am going to find my brush here, okay? Gonna get my brush wet. And I am going to wipe all that excess water on my paper towel. The only time I want to add water to this is if it's tacky and sticky and I need to kind of smooth it out a little bit. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint my hue box, which is just the color, and you are working really hard on making those nice, neat lines. If you have too much paint on your brush, oops, you're not gonna get a neat line. So you wanna make sure you just have a little bit of paint, but enough to actually fill the square. Okay, so I have my primary color red, and I'm gonna go ahead and write red here. You do not have to worry about this, okay? Don't worry about that. Now I'm going to make my shade. When you are making a shade, and here's your little hint, the box is kind of this, it should be black, it's not, it's a dark gray, but it will help you remember that shades, you are adding a tiny bit of black. When I say a tiny bit of black, I mean a tiny bit of black. So I need to get just like the smallest amount possible on my paper here, because I don't need a lot. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of this red, I'm gonna separate it from my red pile right here. And then I'm gonna take a tiny amount of black, like we're talking a tiny amount of black, and mix. And this is how we are going to create our shades. So you're gonna wanna keep this in mind for your next project. And I wanna make sure I get all that paint off the brush so it is a completely mixed together. Kind of twirl it around a little bit. I really get it off there. Okay, now, once again, if you have too much paint on your brush, it's gonna be hard to make a clean line. So you kind of wanna wipe it off on your palette, whatever palette you're using. And then I'm gonna paint my shade box, trying to keep those lines as neatly as possible. Okay, now for my tint, as you might have guessed, I'm going to add white. So I need to wash my brush, getting all that color off. I'm gonna dry it off. I'm gonna get some white on my palette, tiny bit, you don't need very much. Okay, so I'm gonna scoop up. I don't like how this is hanging off my brush. That's making my lines. That's what happens when brushes start to go bad. That's gonna make my lines a little bit hard to get straight when I have those hairs hanging off. So I have my red, and I'm gonna add a little bit of white. The amount you wanna add is up to you. It does not need to match a certain color like you were doing with the color wheel. I just want you to be able to see the 3 different values you can make with red. Okay, so I'm kind of wiping off all that excess on my brush so I can get a clean line. Okay, so my first one's done. Now we're gonna go, I'm gonna show you the secondary colors. So of course, secondary colors are the colors we get when we mix our primaries. And the first secondary color I'm going to do is orange. So I'm gonna write it down here. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about this, okay? So I'm gonna get a little bit more red. Probably need a tiny bit more. And of course I need my yellow to mix orange. When you're mixing colors, remember when you're doing orange, you're gonna want a lot of yellow and a little bit of red. Start with that, just like a little bit. For this exercise, you don't have to match your orange to the color wheel, but you might want to, because you want to get it as close as possible to a true orange as you can. So my orange is going to go in the middle box, same thing, all the way down. My orange goes here. Okay, now I should have mixed more orange because we have to do our shade and we have to do our tint. So I'm actually gonna do that right now. So when you're mixing up your orange, mix up enough to get through all your colors. Or I'm sorry, not your colors, your tints and your shades, your values. I should have said values. We will talk more about value later. So that orange is a little dark. I'm gonna grab a little more yellow. Kind of squishing all that paint out of the brush because I see some red in there. Okay, so now I'm gonna pull some of this orange to the side over here, and I'm gonna add the teeniest amount of black. Just like barely any. When I say the teeniest amount, trust me. Make sure you get a nice clean mix. Okay, and then I'm gonna paint my shade. Okay, and now, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do this quickly. It's not very neat, but I know it's not very exciting to watch. So I'm trying to do it quick. If I was slowing down, I could get a neater line. Really washing my brush here, drying my brush on the towel. You can't see, but here it is. And now I'm gonna add some white to my orange over here to make my tint. Making sure to mix it up really good so I don't have a streaky color. And I mean, I love a streaky color, but not for this exercise we're doing right here. Okay, and then I'm going to paint my tint of orange. So you're gonna have orange, green, purple, red, yellow, blue.